Andree's going to use their microphone, and I am going to turn mine off when the presentation starts. Andree Ruggeri is our first speaker, and Andree's from NAVA, National Association of the Visual Arts, and this one is in the physical versus temporal space, digital publics and galleries and museums. And Andree's going to talk about NAVA's revised code of practice towards a sustainable sector. So hopefully 15 minutes with 5 minutes for questions, and then we'll have the next one. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you. I'm just going to attempt to share again. Please tell me if you can see my presenter notes at any point, but that you should still be able to see the big screen, yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm presenting today from the stolen lands of the Boon, Wurrung and Wurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nation. I'm in Sunshine in Melbourne. I pay my respects to elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, including those here today. Sovereignty was never ceded, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So my name's Andree, and I'm the Tertiary Education Coordinator at NAVA, and I have a professional background in the arts and tertiary education. Most recently, I've worked as a sessional teacher and learning support programs coordinator at Victoria University in Footscray in Melbourne. I've also worked in the arts for about 15 years in many different roles, and I'm currently the chair of an artist-run space in Footscray in Melbourne called Trocadero Projects. For those of you who may not have come across NAVA before, and apologies if you already have, the National Association for the Visual Arts is a membership organisation that brings together the numerous voices of the contemporary art sector to improve fundamental conditions in both work and practice for artists and arts workers. We do this through advocacy, education, and of course, the code of practice for the visual arts, craft and design. Trying to move slides, but you know, trying. There we go. So today I'll be introducing the code of practice, and I'll refer to it as the code, and I'll be talking about the ways that the code provides a guide made by the arts sector for the arts sector and a blueprint for the formal recognition of art in Australia as a real job and a real industry. I'll be introducing the revised code that has just launched, and I'll be talking about its framework of an ethic of care as being key to sustaining the sector, how the code points to the need for the legislation of industry standards for visual arts, how this is both a personal, financial need and one that is crucial to our national ecology of arts. And I'll talk about our tertiary program a little bit as it's a way of fostering sustainable practices early on in creative careers. And I'll end with a little call to action to start drawing on the code now within your capacity. And I guess we often talk about a brighter future for the sector, and sometimes it can feel like we're waiting forever for that to start. So I thought, let's start at the end of this presentation. So NAVA's Code of Practice is a document that sets out equitable, ethical and self-reflective standards for the visual arts, craft and design. It covers good practice approaches to working relationships, standards of access and inclusion, and payment rates for artists and arts workers, among many other topics. It was first published in 2001, and this latest revision, I should say, is the full review since 2009, and it involved really extensive consultation and collaboration with artists, arts workers, and organisations across the country. Ultimately, over 30 writers who are sector professionals across Australia were engaged to create the new code. And as such, the code really shares our sector's collective knowledge and learnings to support us when navigating the industry so that we don't have to just learn it by our mistakes or feel our way through it. So here, hopefully, you can see the new code website homepage. This is now considered to be a live document, evolving alongside the industry and undergoing constant review and updating. Each chapter includes a summary of good practice recommendations, followed by a detailed discussion of responsibilities, recommended processes, resources, and case studies where appropriate too. And I just wanted to give you a clearer view of the code hero image here by artist and illustrator Claudia Chinere-Acolier. She was asked to convey the diverse ecology of the visual arts, craft and design sector in Australia. And you can see workers undertaking a number of different practices and roles in this image. And I think it's a really good representation of the collective work that makes our sector unique, and also the support, particularly in a COVID or post-COVID context, that the sector has kind of learnt to provide for itself. So I wanted to focus on a few areas of the new code as they relate to contemporary concerns of the sector, particularly in a post-COVID setting. As we know, arts and culture often leads progressive social change by challenging injustice and championing inclusion, representation and rights. And it often uses its platform to inspire change across many areas of society external to the arts. Evidence of this, I think, can be found in the new code, which is really underpinned by an ethic of care to reflect the contemporary practices and needs of artists and arts workers in Australia. So this first chapter, as you see, is a new section driven by the sector, and it addresses principles, ethics and rights as a matter of priority in the arts. And it demonstrates the growing concern with issues of justice, access, fair work, representation, and so on since the code was last revised. This chapter aims to provide an ethical framework that the sector has agreed we should all be observing or working towards. And it can be used as a guide for self-advocacy for workers in the sector needing to make a case for themselves, either within the sector or perhaps more often when working as an artist outside of the sector. So my view has just changed of you. I can't see any of you anymore, so I don't know if you can still see me. I can't see any of you, so.
Our view hasn't changed.
Okay, great.
In the room, maybe someone online mine's fine online as well. I'm on both.
Okay.
I can see you, Andree.
Thanks. So within each subchapter, as you can see here, there's a recommended resource section, which points to external expert organisations in their fields, for example, arts access and inclusion. And I just wanted to point to this because it really allows us to provide the most appropriate resources and support for the sector. You can find this in every chapter, and you can also find it kind of throughout the whole code as well. I also just wanted to quickly show you that the code website itself offers a range of accessibility adjustments so that more people can utilise the code for their work. So that list goes down and down. So I guess I think that the very existence of such a comprehensive guide in the Code of Practice is itself evidence that industry legislation around the arts work is way overdue. Our sector is dynamic and diverse, yes, but we can increasingly see that the lack of regulation and legislation, along with very precarious conditions due to things like global events, funding cuts and increasing cost of living, makes arts work and practice unsustainable for many people. This image is quite, embodies what really we're talking about. So artists have never been part of the standard pay and conditions framework that covers the majority of other other workers, I should say, in Australia, including the performing arts. We have also seen a steady decline in funding and support for organisations and individual artists over 15 years or so. And as we know, this has made the impacts of the pandemic felt severely in the sector. And we've seen that the economic and cultural value of the arts is often not understood, despite a lot of evidence demonstrating to the contrary. So we know that the financial insecurity and isolation from our community that came with COVID impacts on individual artists and the broader arts ecology. And artists and arts workers often need to find external sources of income, and their ability to gain equitable pay in the arts can be hampered by a lack of legislation. So given this, it's unsurprising that the Code's payment standards section has historically been the most utilised and accessed section of the Code of Practice, in the absence of legislated payment standards for the sector specifically. So the recommendations within this section of the Code have the difficult task of balancing the value of artists' work with the capacity of organisations that are increasingly working with funding cuts. It provides a benchmark for fees and wages, which can be used in negotiations between artists and organisations, and it also provides other recommendations around super, tax and other allowances for different business models. So the Code payment standards are often treated as the industry standard in the absence of a legislated award rate. NAVA's recently made a submission to the federal government's new national cultural policy that's still in development. And in this, we've advocated for a comprehensive industry award, as well as policies to establish that artists get paid properly, even if they don't fit under a particular kind of employer kind of award. The submission recommended that industrial reform for the sector must recognise the intrinsic social and economic value that the visual arts provides to Australia's identity and well-being. I don't know how I'm going for time. It's okay, I think. So the NAVA tertiary program seeks to continue this advocacy. Its purpose is to foster a sustainable sector from the outset by helping students learn about the professional side of working in the arts while still at school or in post-secondary education contexts. Increasingly, we see this as more important given the strain on the industry. So the program will seek to introduce the fundamentals of developing a career in the arts. It'll be delivered through professional practice coursework, but also beyond. And it aims to grow awareness of the Code, help students to navigate and interpret concepts in the Code, and also use them in their coursework, in their assignments. And it also fosters the application of the Code standards in the real world, because as we know, many young artists and arts workers or people still at uni are already working in different capacities, either as volunteers, casuals, part-time, full-time, in different arts sector organisations and in different ways. Ultimately, we want to produce graduates with a sector sustainability mindset. So by the time we get to the workforce, we're already on it, basically. And we're working on this at the moment. I'm working on this at the moment, and with an aim to start implementing in 2023. So I have a little call to action, asking that you start to embed the Code in your role in one way. As I said before, you know, we could be waiting for things to change, but we can also start to do that ourselves. And I know most of us already do, but I thought I would share this. If you scan the QR code or follow that link or write it down or take a photo, whatever you want to do, if you can visit the Code website that links you to and have a look through the menu and decide on one way that you can bring the Code into your work context as an artist or a teacher, a researcher, a student, volunteer, arts worker, whatever it is. Because I think that if we can foster sustainable and equitable practices today, then this will help to not only protect those working in our sector, but continue the advocacy work as a collective. So I'm just finishing up. I've got a QR code here for a subscription to NAVA. It's free for students to subscribe and become members, so that QR code will take you there. And if you do want to get in touch with myself, my contact details are there, so please feel free. That's me.
Thank you so much. Have we got some questions, either in the room or online? When was is this a brand new code? When was this one released?
It was released about a month ago, I believe. Yeah. So it's a revision. It's a full revised version of the code that's had different revisions over the years. The last full revision was 2009, but this is the full revised version that was released